My name's Charlie Fuqua. I've written a book, God's Law, The Only Political Solution. I'm an attorney, and what amazes me is that even in the age of Trump, nobody in the news media is asking any questions about what affects Americans and really people all around the world the most. And that is, where does money come from? Have you ever wondered that? People tell us, when the government deficit spends, it creates money to cover the deficit. But I just want you to think about that for a minute. If the government created money every time it was involved in deficit spending, why would the government ever be in debt? It wouldn't. It couldn't be in debt. And the truth is that our money is not created by our government. Our money is created by the privately owned Federal Reserve banking system. Now, if you don't believe that, you can go on the internet and you can verify that fairly easy. You can even go to the Federal Reserve's own website and verify that the Federal Reserve banks, and there's 12 of them, are owned by member commercial banks in their district. And how is money created? Well, you would think that something this important would be something you learned in school, but probably you didn't learn it in school. We believe that when banks loan money, that it's savers' money that's deposited in the bank, and then the bank loans it out to people. Say you want to go buy a house or a car, you borrow money from the bank that somebody has saved and deposited in the bank. Well, now I just want you to think about that. Right now, inflation's running, 3% or so. What kind of a return can you get on money in a savings account? 0.2%? Nobody puts money in a savings account anymore because it's a losing proposition. If you're getting 0.2% and inflation is running along at 2 or 3%, you are losing value. So nobody is putting very much money in savings accounts. So where do banks get the money that they loan out? Well, it's based on average daily balances in demand deposit accounts. Now, what's a demand deposit account? It's a checking account. So based on the average daily balance that's in checking accounts, banks can lend out. Now, it's known as the fractional reserve system because they can actually loan out many times more money than they have deposited as in their checking accounts as average daily balances. And I believe that's somewhere around 10 times as much right now, based on the legal fractional reserve ratio. Now, how does that work? Well, you go to a bank, you borrow money. Where does the money come from? The bank creates it on the spot as a debt accounting entry. Now, it's key to understand that when you pay the money back, the money that you pay back is extinguished. It goes out of existence. Now, remember that all money in existence is created by being loaned into existence at interest and must be paid back to the money creator plus interest. Now, one level of money creation is the level I just described to you, where individuals, consumers, go to banks and borrow money. The other level of money creation in the United States takes place when the federal government deficit spends. It goes to the Federal Reserve banks. The Federal Reserve banks then create money out of nothing. It's a debt accounting entry, and they loan it to the federal government. They loan it at interest. Now, think about this. Those are the two places where money is created. All money in existence is created by being loaned into existence and must be paid back to the money creator plus interest. That means that there's always more money owed to the money creator than there is money in existence. Well, how does that work? What happens? Well, the only way it can work is that the banking system as a whole must always create ever increasing debt, either by loaning to the government or loaning to the people. And then the new money to pay the interest is created as the interest comes due. So we must have a constantly expanding money system. Now, I want you to think about the effects of that. When the money supply expands, the value of the money decreases. That's known as inflation. Okay? So the inflation is the expansion of the money supply. The result of having more money out there bidding on goods and services is that the money's worth less. Our Federal Reserve System was created in 1912. And since then, our money has lost over 90% of its value. And its value is decreasing every day due to inflation. So think about how this system works. Now, just think about your hometown. What institution or building in your hometown occupies the most dominant or predominant location, the highest price location in town? What institution in your town has the nicest building in town? It's the bank, isn't it? That's because banks have unlimited funds because they create money out of nothing and loan it into existence. I want you to think about something else here. And if you just think about these things make sense. It's the only way it can be. We know the money supply is growing constantly. Well, how's that happening? Well, I just explained it to you. You try to find another explanation for how the money supply grows. You can't. Also, all the nations, or I should say most of the nations of the earth, are deep in debt. Now, we hear a lot of talk about how the United States is the nation on earth that has the most debt. And we talk about our trade imbalances, which we have, and they put us deeper in debt because foreign countries, especially China, buy our debt. So that's part of why we're in debt. But if we didn't have a central banking system with a monopoly of creating our nation's currency and money supply, because our money supply is more than currency, we would not have this incredible debt that we have. And think about that. Every time the government deficit spends and borrows new money into existence, what that does is that steals from senior citizens. That's basically who has savings because they've worked to save all their life. And it also puts an ever-increasing debt on future generations. This is a terrible system for all those other than those who own the system. Now think about this. Why didn't you learn about this in school? Well, the reason you didn't learn about it in school is if you can create money out of nothing, you can buy the best politicians money can buy. You can control the educational system. You can control the news media. And they will make sure that you do not gain this information. Just think about if you live in a small town, you've probably got a local newspaper. Pick up your newspaper and see who always buys the majority of the ads in the newspaper. It's banks. That newspaper couldn't survive without the ads placed there by banks. So that newspaper is never going to tell you the truth about banking. And what about the big news media? They can't tell you the truth because they all borrow money from the banking system. And if they tell you the truth, their loans dry up. They can't do business. The educational system is also controlled by money, to grants to universities which train teachers. So the whole system is controlled to keep us perpetually ignorant on this issue. So the only place you're going to get it is by looking at a video like this. And by the way, there's lots of videos on the internet about how money is created, and you can go to a lot of them. But think about this. You see George Soros out in the news all the time advocating for the end of all nations. Now, there's one family that controls the banking systems of the world, and it's the Rothschild family. And George Soros wouldn't be doing anything unless it was approved by the Rothschilds. As a matter of fact, George Soros is the front man for what the Rothschilds want. And his main objective is to do away with all nations. Because what the Rothschilds and the international bankers want is they want a government controlled by them, a one world government where they control everything. Now, the main enemy of the international bankers today is the nation of Russia. Now, why is that? It's because Russia is almost debt-free. They have paid off most of their debts, and they're just almost debt-free. That is intolerable to the bankers. And so they make Russia the villain of the world. Don't trust anything you hear on the media or on the news about Russia. They want the world to go to war with Russia so that they can loan money to all the nations of the world that they create out of nothing and get interest on, and they can put Russia back in the fold under the control of the international bankers. Now, even the communist revolution in Russia was financed by the Rothschild family. Vladimir Putin knows this. I've heard him make statements about it. And he despises the Rothschilds. And that's why he's the villain of the world today. Now, is he a dictator in Russia? Sure he is. He's a dictator. But you know, there's most of Western nations lived under kings, which were dictators, for many generations. And Russia has never known anything other than autocratic rule. So we shouldn't be surprised that autocratic rule is what the Russian people choose. It's all they know. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Look those things up on the internet and see if this makes any sense. But the key issue to understanding everything that's going on in the world today is follow the money. See where money comes from, because the love of money is the root of all evil. I'm Charlie Fuqua. Thank you.